So this panel event is a collaborative effort organized by the Taiwan Climate Action Network, the Stanley Center for Peace and Security, and the Center for Climate and Security. I'd like to extend our gratitude to our amazing partners, all the panelists, and everyone present today. Let me quickly introduce TCAN to you. It's a coalition of 5 leading environmental NGOs in Taiwan, including GCAA. The member organizations include Citizens of Earth Taiwan, the Environmental Rights Foundation, Homemaker United Foundation, and the Taiwan Environment and Planning Association. TCAN aims to accelerate climate action by promoting joint advocacy and fostering international cooperation. TCAN is dedicated to accelerating climate action through several key initiatives, such as advocating for effective climate law and carbon pricing mechanisms, driving the transformation of industry toward sustainability, promoting robust renewable energy development, and facilitating climate action initiatives within local governments. So at this critical juncture in the climate crisis, we hope this panel today could be an opportunity for us to learn from each other's energy transition experiences and explore effective strategies for building energy resilient society that not only meet our climate commitments, but also promote peace and partnership in these times of instability. Especially, I believe much of the discourse around energy transition has been disproportionately focused on the source or type of energy. While this is important, it often overlooks deeper question about the shifts in power dynamics and changes in geopolitics that are equally crucial. So today we hope to explore how these shifts in power and geopolitics influence our path towards achieving climate justice and uncover the ways in which energy resilience, climate adaptation, and international cooperation can redefine traditional concepts of energy security. Now I am excited to introduce our amazing panelists today. We have Ray Tang, the Program Officer for Climate Change at the Stanley Center for Peace and Security, Aaron Sikowski, Director of the Center for Climate and Security, Jiawei Zhao, Research Director of the Taiwan Climate Action Network, Mika Obayashi, Director of the Renewable Energy Institute, Sally Zhang, Lead for Climate Diplomacy at Solutions for Our Climate, and Xinping Wu, Senior Director of the Homemaker United Foundation. We're really honored to have each of them with us today. Okay, now I'll take a moment to explain how today's panel will work. So we have a total of 6 speakers, and they'll be organized into 2 groups. And each group will give a brief presentation, followed by a short discussion. We will then wrap up with a Q&A session where we invite everyone here to share their thoughts and ask questions. Okay, first up, we have Aaron Sikowski, the Director of the Center for Climate and Security and the International Military Council on Climate and Security. She specializes in geopolitical risk and the national security impact of climate change. Previously, she served as Deputy Director of the Strategic Futures Group at the National Intelligence Council, where she led climate security analysis for the U.S. intelligence community. Okay, Aaron, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much to the Taiwan Climate Action Network, to the Stanley Center today, for all of you for choosing to be here among many other events in New York this week. As mentioned, I direct the Center for Climate and Security, which is a think tank and research institute based in Washington, D.C. that looks at how climate change is shaping the national security landscape, both for the United States, but also for its allies and partners around the globe. And I was really excited to participate in this conversation because I think we often talk about the security challenges posed by climate hazards themselves, which I am going to touch on, but it's also important to think about how continued dependence on fossil fuels poses security risks as well, including in East Asia and what we can do about that. So I'm going to start on the traditional, what I would say the traditional climate security picture, right? You've had everyone from the Secretary of Defense in the United States calling climate change an existential risk. You have the new Foreign Secretary of the UK just last week giving his first public talk, and it was all about the security challenges from climate change. You also have military and security leaders in East Asia highlighting this. In the Shangri-La dialogues earlier this year, the Minister of Defense of the Republic of Korea talked about climate as an untraditional threat that was raising uncertainty across the region. Similarly, the previous Minister of Defense in Japan, coming to the Climate Leaders Summit that President Biden held in 2021, he called it a spiral risk, right? That affects lots of different things that national security leaders care about. So there's a consensus, right, that climate is a security risk. And my one slide up here tells you one reason that consensus exists. We at the Center for Climate and Security run something called the Military Response to Climate Hazards Tracker, or MIRCH, is the acronym in the US. And what we do is for the past 2 years, we've been tracking every time a military around the world deploys in response to a hazard of the type driven by climate change. So flooding, wildfire, drought. It's an open source project. I'm sure there are things we have missed. But as of 1 September, we were about up to 400 deployments around the globe in 89 different countries. And that's at, approximately 1.5 degrees of warming, right? And so already military leaders are finding this unsustainable in many places. They're saying we can't do this and do our traditional duties. And as the planet continues to warm, if we continue on a high warming trajectory, this will definitely become unsustainable. And these deployments and these demand for deployments will outpace military's ability. So that's one reason militaries care. A second reason is the compound risks of climate change, right? When climate change layers on top of other security challenges. Sometimes in the US, I'm asked by policymakers, all right, China or climate change, which is the bigger threat? How would you rack and stack those two? And I always tell them that's the wrong way to ask the question, right? What we really need to think about instead is how they layer on top of one another. And in particular, I think one place we can look for some answers on that layering and why these things matter. The U.S. State Department earlier this year, an advisory board for the State Department released a new report on new security challenges. And in that report, they used a Taiwan scenario to illustrate the compound risks of climate change. What they looked at was if, a typhoon or a storm hit Taiwan at a time of high tensions between the U.S. and China, for example, over that island. And what that could do to destroy island infrastructure, but not affect the mainland, for example. What it might do if the U.S. or China's infrastructure was interrupted by that typhoon, which could change their ability to perceive each other's moves, that a storm could block or delay the U.S. ability to defend Taiwan, that the U.S. could temporarily lose bases in the region that it needs to defend Taiwan, and there could be supply chain disruptions. And all of this in the context of China trying to take advantage, potentially, of that security threat. So again, it's really important to see these things as linked, and that's why military leaders are so concerned. And so those are the two kind of traditional climate security issues I would highlight for you. But I think in the context of this conversation around the transition to renewable energy and the risks of continuing continuing on fossil fuel use, we at the center have done some work in both Japan and Korea in the past year to engage with security actors there to get them thinking about these risks. And we did this through scenarios and tabletop exercises. And in each country, we convened security leaders to explore two different scenarios. One scenario was an acute crisis where there was a sudden loss of a major supplier of fossil fuel energy focused on the Middle East. I have to say, unfortunately, this seems perhaps less like a future scenario and something we are perhaps in the midst of a crisis around now. We also did a slow onset scenario where the countries were left behind in the transition to renewable energy, where other countries have really sped up their transition and public opinion has soured on fossil fuel use in the wake of increased disasters. And so through the use of these two scenarios, we explored with these security leaders what that might mean for their countries and why fossil fuel use would be a threat. And there were 3 points that I'll leave you with, and I know I've just got a minute left, that we took from these scenarios. One point was just the incredible uncertainties and vulnerabilities in supply disruptions of fossil fuels due to conflict, geopolitics, and climate disasters themselves going forward in the next few decades, and how that risks security for both Korea and Japan. The other takeaway was that even in wealthy, established democracies, the multiplicity of crises that countries will be facing in a climate change world will strain their capacity to manage risks, right? So at the same time you're struggling to get access to fossil fuels in a conflict scenario, for example, you're competing for that access, you're also dealing with climate disasters at home, and your bandwidth and your capacity to manage all of these different challenges, add, say, a Taiwan crisis on top of that, would be really difficult. And something that you need to prepare and build resilience for. And then the third takeaway is just how important it is to challenge our deeply held assumptions about climate and how the world works as we explore the impacts of climate change going forward. In both countries, in the scenario process, participants had a really hard time envisioning a world in which public opinion had shifted so much that it would actually put pressure on them around fossil fuel use, or that key allies like the United States might put pressure on them around fossil fuel use to the point where it affected defense relationships, right? But those, I think, are very real potential future issues that we need to explore and think about and challenge how we think about fossil fuel use. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from my fellow panelists.
Our discussion today and giving us a lot to think about. Next, I am excited to introduce Ray Tang, the Program Officer for Climate Change at the Stanley Center for Peace and Security, where he leads the climate team's efforts through policy dialogues, analysis, and outreach. He collaborates with policymakers, civil society, and private sector to advance international cooperation for a sustainable climate future.
Well, thanks for having me. So we are Stanley Center's international affairs organization, and we look across issues of climate change, of course, as well as mass atrocities and nuclear weapons. And we try to convene and produce knowledge to tackle these challenges through international cooperation. And so what I'm going to talk about here is some of the takeaways from some of the convening that we've done, especially looking at the geopolitics of the energy transition, as well as kind of framing around energy security. And I'm pretty happy to just be able to work with Center for Climate Security and Climate Action Network, as well as others, because I think that energy security as a framing is particularly salient in these places. And that they do have a lot of force and impact in terms of energy policies. And so even just being able to, I think, get these groups together from across the region is exciting, and I think hopefully we end up with some good understanding of all the places and how we can cooperate. I think because I think the similarities are going to be really striking. Okay. So I think maybe just to start off, so energy security, I think can be interpreted in a lot of ways, and there's quite a few different audiences. I think for where it has the most impact, it's really a kind of this high-level policy, energy policy audience, particularly when you're talking about energy ministries, when you're talking about kind of foreign policy makers. And so the way it shows up, I think, is really unique and peculiar. There's other ways to frame the energy transition, of course, when you're talking about kind of livelihoods, consumers, environmental justice, all these things. But I just wanted to highlight this line here. So in the COP last year, there was kind of this language about transitioning away from fossil fuels, but then here you have this one part that says recognizes that transitional fuels can play a role in facilitating the energy transition while ensuring energy security. So basically just to say that energy security is still very much associated with continuing to use fossil fuels. But there's been some research lately, and I think energy analysts are kind of changing based on looking at the reality of the energy transition. So this graphic comes from a report from the International Renewable Energy Agency on energy security that came out in April, kind of looking at the differences between renewables and fossil fuels. So I think the main thing probably to take away is that fossil fuels require a 24/7 supply chain that lasts throughout the entire year, and you need to be able to have that continually bring in new fuel, sometimes halfway around the world, kind of indefinitely. It's subject to global price fluctuations as well as geopolitical risk. There's a lot of kind of political economy issues around fossil fuels where various kind of ruling regimes are able to kind of use them to take control of power. Renewables are different. So I think that there's a bit of a misconception of renewables in that people focus a lot on critical minerals and where, but they kind of transpose the fossil fuel paradigm, which we're trying to move away from, to renewable energy. So you look at critical minerals, that's actually not where the energy comes from, right? They don't burn like lithium. So you don't need a constant supply of it. Once you build the infrastructure, the actual energy is from the sun and the wind, which is infinite, right? So it's just a completely different thing. And I think if you look at it more closely, you can look at kind of the differences in terms of trade volume and things like that, and just the amount of material that's required is a lot less. Obviously, there are issues with critical minerals that we need to be addressing, but I just wanted to highlight that in terms of the paradigm. It's very different between the two sources. So some takeaways that I think we kind of came out with in these convenings, not just this is kind of how we're looking at fossil fuels. And I'm kind of just doing this just to situate, I think, this conversation and to kind of highlight that when we're talking about energy security and resilience in East Asia, these are maybe ways to do some further work on it or see how my fellow panelists will kind of present these issues. And then, yeah, renewable energy, at the end of the day, is infinite, safe, and stable. And so when you look at energy security, I think the way that line kind of was written in the cloud text, it was kind of saying, oh, we have energy security by continuing to have these transition fuels, but it's actually, as long as you keep those fuels around, problems of energy security that define energy security for the last 50 years are still there. So, but once you get rid of those fuels and once you have renewable energy, you're in a different paradigm. And that's not to say that there's no energy security problems, but I think the paradigms are very different. And I think you're kind of moving away from this kind of flow-based kind of model to more of a stock-based model. And I think the question more becomes more around energy resilience and security in that sense. Yeah, so this is just kind of a comparison of kind of the amount of coal that you need compared to like lithium contrast by Irina. And so I kind of wanted to leave with some questions, I think, that hopefully the panel will address, maybe keep in mind while we're going through this. So definitely what further analysis is needed in East Asia context to understand these dynamics. What are particular similarities in East Asia, the framing around energy security and resilience? So I think Taiwan, Japan, Korea, they actually have a lot of similarities, and they're very different from the way that people talk about energy security and kind of the rest of the world. And I think that so there's a huge opportunity, I think, to really deal with a really challenging, I think, topic by working together, basically. And I think the gas issue is also something that is peculiar to East Asia as well, in that sense. How can we kind of work together across Taiwan, Korea, Japan to look at how to transition away from fossil paradigms? And then lastly, does this reexamination lead to more space for cooperation, whether it's between Taiwan, Korea, Japan, or even in East Asia more broadly? There's a lot of linkages with Southeast Asia, there's a lot of linkages with the Middle East, of course, there's China as an elephant in the room. So, what kind of fundamental assumptions can that shake up? So I just wanted to kind of give a breezy presentation. I can't wait until to hear more details from the others. So thank you very much.
For taking us further to explore the broader implication of energy transition from the geopolitical point of view. So next we have Dr. Jiawei Zhao, Research Director of the Taiwan Climate Action Network. He's also a member of National Climate Change Committee in Taiwan. Since 2007, Dr. Zhao has been actively engaged in climate and energy policy, offering evidence-based recommendation to support environmental NGOs in Taiwan.
Hello everyone. I will talking about the nexus between the energy transition and the national security based on what I observed in Taiwan. So the title of my presentation, I'm using the sentence pattern that we were always talking about national security issue in Taiwan. And we talk about one China to integration or to system, those kind of stuff. But I will say when we talk about the national security, linkage between the national security and also energy transition, we also have this kind of similar situation. So the first thing I would like to ask is about whether we are in the kind of security moment right now, because I think most of the attendants will agree this narrative, and I was quite excited when I went to the Dubai last November. I attended a lot of events around this issue and tried to bring this issue back to Taiwan to let the public, the policymakers have some awareness about this situation. But in the end, I found out that two days ago, when we see the outcome of the pact for the future, the action related to the climate security was deleted. So it's kind of like it gives us a very disadvantage to mainstream this issue in Taiwan, because in the meantime, although everyone talking about the United States, they thinking about Taiwan in this kind of climate security assessment situation, but in our national defense report, actually the climate change only mentioned about three times, and they are talking like we are just as a non-traditional security issue, but they were talking about we set out the rooftop PV in our military base. But beyond that, there's a lot of strategies thinking about that. It's not like NATO, they have a climate impact assessment or national security strategy in the United States. They also have a paragraph around the climate change issue. So that's the thing we are seeing right now. But that doesn't mean that Taiwan did not care about these things. So I try to categorize the narrative we have around the energy transition and the national security. The tier one, the first tier of the discussion, the technical energy security issue that we are always aware of, we are all talking about. The rail also pointing out this kind of situation. So I would say when we 2 years ago, when the former speaker Nancy Pelosi was visiting Taiwan, I get a lot of call from the journalists in those days because China was holding the military drawing around Taiwan. Everybody was calling to ask about this kind of safety stuff for our LNG. Is that enough? Is that we have a better preparation for those kind of energy security issue? But I would say, although in Taiwan we talk about we are building the LNG as a transition fuel, so they were extending the share of the LNG in our energy mix. So they also set out kind of like a target for the safety stock of the LNG, and also they are now they Taiwan import half of our LNG are from Australia and the United States. So they are thinking, oh, we are importing LNG from our allies, so we can reduce those kind of security risks that we have to talk about. But those kind of things, when we say, oh, we can have 40 days of the safety stock, they cannot comfort the public anxiety in terms of the energy security issue. And another key number when we talk about energy security is around nowadays Taiwan imports 98%, 96% of our energy. And according to our study, we can reduce the energy dependency ratio to 47% by 2050. But this kind of security benefit is hardly mentioned by the government talking about the benefit of the net zero transition. So that's the thing we have seen right now. But the second tier of this kind of narrative will lead to the climate risk of the silicon shell. The silicon shell, this term actually is proposed in 2001, so it's almost 25 years ago. But now they are thinking, we are talking about the importance of the semiconductors. Taiwan is talking about the chip diplomacy. So the role of the semiconductor industry is getting important right now. But they are facing a lot of the climate risk, not just the physical risk in terms of drought, the flooding, but also the transitional risk and the booming of the semiconductor industry leads to a faster expansion of the LNG consumption in Taiwan. So that will be intertwined to the virus narrative that I have mentioned before. In the third tier of those kind of narratives, I was talking about Taiwan factor versus China factor, like the area mentioned about. In the meantime, I would say the countries become a leverage point within I would say Taiwan, United States, and the China triangle. So you can see when the next policy comes to visit Taiwan, the first thing that cancels around the Taiwan working group discussion. Then China-Taiwan envoy Xi Jinping, he specifically mentioned Taiwan during his opening speech at the COP. I think the very first time or second time. So we have seen those kind of things. And then for Taiwan, we are like to using the UNFCCC as an entry point for the United Nations. So every time we try to pass this kind of motions or resolution to support Taiwan to join the UNFCCC. But we did not prepare for this kind of substantial work in terms of the climate security moment, like what's our role in terms of those epidemic funding or NCQ3, the coming NCQ3. So those kind of things are kind of like we did not build out the overall climate policy that we need to have a substantial progress in this topic. Then, so based on those three kind of discussion, I will bring back to that. From my observation, I would say the rhetoric of the security actually hinder the energy transition in Taiwan right now. Because the reason why is that first of all, we were talking about our food security. Because Taiwan also import a lot of food. But when we talk about food security, we also hinder the possibility to progress the agri-voltaic development, so that limit the progress of the solar energy. And then the second thing is that the discussion around the technical energy security concern that give a social license for the government. They can justify the decision talking about the coal phase down, not the phase out, because they said if we are phase out the nuclear, and then we were going to phase out and then we phase out the coal, and at the same time, that will give us kind of fewer options for our energy security. So that's the situation. But in the other aspect, the pro-nuclear group, basically the opposition party right now, they will use this argument to say, oh, we should prolong the lifetime of the existing nuclear power plant, although it only contributes around 3% of our total duration capacity right now. The most important thing is that nowadays we find out that only less than 10% of the Taiwan population knows about we import more than 96% of the energy. So, and they did not thinking the energy security issue is an issue they need to support for the renewable energy development. So we can see the supporting for solar and offshore wind actually is up and down. They did not stabilize because they did not think of the energy transition or renewable energy development should be an overriding public interest compared to the other party priority. So I was summing up that if we want to build out an enabling condition for the climate security movement in Taiwan, the first thing is that we need to enhance the climate literacy for the security and the diplomacy division. So the workshop that Aaron mentioned, I will hope that we can introduce that to Taiwan. That will be very helpful for us to think about that. And then the second thing is that we can think about our new role in the friend shoring around the PV clean tech. Actually, 10 years ago, Taiwan, the PV production capacity of Taiwan ranked top 3 around the world. So now that we are talking about the friendly sharing, we can have a role to play in this sense. So that's why that we should earn the argument of the energy security back, not from the people who are using the energy security to against the energy transition. Our environmental NGO, we should try to earn the public support for the energy transition by using the security argument. So that's the thing I want to highlight. Okay, so thank you all.
And thank you so much to Aaron, Ray, and Jiawei for your thought-provoking presentation. So I feel like there's a lot of unlearning and unpacking to do. Although we see this in Taiwan, the very concept of security can be used to justify maintaining the status quo or even weaponized against the energy transition movement. So thank you for allowing us to reflect critically on the idea of energy security, to break down conventional notions, and to build a more resilient, forward-thinking approach that aligns with the realities of our climate crisis. So now we will transitioning into a brief discussion. So I would like to ask each of you speakers to share your thoughts on an important question. How can we integrate climate and energy policies more closely with national security, strengthening their priority through a security lens, while also fostering greater public support for the energy transition? For example, in Taiwan, when we talk to people about energy transition in the context of sustainability, they may not always see it as urgent or crucial. However, when we frame it as a matter of national security, people tend to recognize its importance and start talking about it more seriously. Start taking it more seriously. So this approach can also be effective when communicating with government departments at times. So I'd like to ask each of you to take about 3 minutes to offer your insights. So let's start with Aaron and then Ray and Jiawei.
Great, it's a great question. It's a hard question too, I think, and I was very pleased to see on your list, climate security education for the security and diplomatic community. I think the challenge there is, right, as everyone knows, security and diplomatic actors already have a huge amount of things on their lists, right? They've got a long list of must-do actions, and you want to make sure you're not introducing climate in such a way that it becomes one more thing on their list, right? Their job jars are quite full already. So instead, you need to be able to help them do their core duties better, right? So when you're talking to security actors, military actors whose main job is to protect a nation, right, from external threats, you need to be able to show them how if they don't understand how climate hazards will shape those threats or impact their ability to respond to those threats, that's how we get them to care and take action. And I think on this question of the energy transition, Ray, I love how you are pushing a reframing, right? A reimagining of our assumptions that we use to understand what energy security means. And I think, having those conversations with national security actors and getting them to become advocates within their own governments, right? Not just of a transition within militaries to clean energy, but why their country as a whole needs to transition. I think they can be really powerful voices in a way that environmental activists or climate scientists, for better or for worse, sometimes aren't heard at the same level. But it takes a lot of engagement and understanding what their priorities are already, and then how you bring climate into that. And so it can be a slow process, but a really important one.
Yeah, I think that there's kind of a way to look at, I think, the audience around security issues or national security issues, and kind of the cross section between that and energy security. So that was really interesting to see how much fuel was left, or that element on hand. I think for the most part, like in a lot of different, I'd say more kind of, I think, globally, people are usually more concerned about, I think, energy security in the sense of, how much they're paying for their gas, or how much they're paying for their electricity, as well as, businesses being concerned about that too. And I think that is kind of I think we have to kind of segment that kind of discussion from maybe more of this kind of more kind of national security or foreign policy audience, where there's just a different kind of conversation going on. And I think, East Asia maybe has some more unique kind of characteristics. I don't know why exactly, but where this kind of framing is particularly salient and has this impact over policy that I think has been overcome a little bit more, like in Europe, for example, especially after kind of the war started in Ukraine. There was a big push for, kind of replacing some fossil fuel, but there was also a big advancement in renewable energy where they're kind of getting past that problem now. And so I do think it is a really specific audience. I think in East Asia there's some, they may need a bigger public discussion, but I think the audience element is really important. And then in terms of, I think, how energy security interacts with, say, climate policy or energy policy or national security policy, I think it's as much about kind of speaking to the concerns in those spaces as well as kind of reframing, I think, how to conceptualize what national security is, reconceptualize what foreign policy is. And in that sense, I think it's kind of, there's so much, I think, foreign policy and national security thinking that's based on this paradigm of fossil fuels that's been around, I'd say, since kind of the end of World War II. And I think that this energy transition is posing a lot of new questions for that. So I think there's kind of a broader kind of conversation there as well.
So before I come to New York, I get a call from our important friend in the Congress. He was thinking that during his summer trip to the EU, a lot of questions he get from around the energy security in Taiwan. But everything was just jumping directly into when we talk about the energy security of Taiwan, they were directly linking into the nuclear issue. So it's not like to take the energy security as a whole. So he was asking me, can we get a more comprehensive framing and comprehensive assessment during this panel to bring this idea back into Taiwan. So I will call out two groups, try to help to do those work. The first group I will ask is about around think tank in the United States, because every time we will see several times that there's a lot of commentary published in the foreign affairs talking about because Taiwan get rid of the nuclear, so we are made this, we are a lot of concern of the energy security. But they forgot to put in the other side that actually we are accelerate all the energy transition because we have a nuclear based on power policy. So they forgot to put this angle. So those narratives will translate into the Mandarin news coverage in Mandarin that used to take the energy transition. So that's the thing we have to keep in mind. So if another time when we want to talk about climate security or energy security, we want to, if we can have a very broad picture, like the area mentioned about when we talk about climate security risk in Taiwan, we should not just talking about just focus on the nuclear issue, but we need to put those kind of disaster situation into consideration. That will be helpful for us to further to proceed any discussion with the secretary department because if we don't have those kind of information, we cannot. They will say, okay, energy transition is not our business. So they don't think they have a role to play in those kind of situations. So another group I want to call out is from our environmental friend, although they are also in Taiwan, but also in Japan and also in Korea, because like in Japan we see the I-100 Japan, they publish kind of a policy brief talking about go for the RE, go for the renewable energy. That will lead to a very great energy security benefit for Japan. Those kind of situations we cannot have in Taiwan right now. So that's kind of thing we have to, like I said, we have to earn back the security argument for us. We cannot just leave the energy security argument to use it against the energy transition. So that's another thing I want to add.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful insights that really help us navigate this really complex but essential challenge. Okay, let's move on to our second group. Our second group of speakers who will continue to expand on the crucial issues from unique contexts from Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. So I would like to welcome Mika Obayashi, the director of the Renewable Energy Institute and co-founder of the Institute for Sustainable Energy Policies. She previously worked as policy and project regional manager for Asian Oceania and the International Renewable Energy Agency, and as a climate advisor for the British Embassy in Japan. Okay. It will take me like 5 minutes to introduce it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much for that kind of a detailed introduction. My name is Mika Obayashi. I'm director at the Renewable Energy Institute Japan. And by the way, vice director of the Institute for Sustainable Energy Policy. That's like, I think it's hard to be working here. Yeah. Today that I would like to introduce that some of the Japan's energy security policy and then how Japan tackles with climate urgency. Okay, so already they very insightfully explained the description of how the energy security and climate urgency or renewable energy expansion related with, but I just want to start with a common aspect. With those two strategies, is building a continual stable energy system. But there are some conflicting elements as well, because of course the usage of fossil fuel. In past economic system, many countries view fossil fuel as key to energy security due to stable supply and existing infrastructure, making them economy cheap. And the climate change measures require shifting from fossil fuel to non-carbon energies, but technical and cost challenges pose short-term risks to energy supply stability. I just want to recall the one remarks from the diplomats of Japan, that of course that the fossil fuel, that we don't have any resource in Japan. So we think it's not stably supplied, but he says like, it doesn't matter where the fuel comes from. It matters how we can stably gain that fuel. So for gaining that fuel from abroad, that a lot of money is consumed, and then so that's a way to assure the energy security for Japan. But now the new era has come. Of course, the green energy transition is happening. Expansion of renewables, improvements in the efficiency of solar and wind power generation, and the significant reduction in cost. Advanced energy storage technology, the development of lithium-ion batteries and new types of battery have made large-scale energy storage possible. So the stability of the variable renewables such as wind and solar could be stored in batteries. And then battery EV deployment. Advances in battery technology have improved the range of EVs, accelerating their spread. And hydrogen energy technology as well. Fuel cells and power generation using green hydrogen are attracting attention as a key to decarbonization. And then also, the transmission system is enhanced to transport the huge amount of renewables onto the grid. So those are the kind of the changes in the energy era, I have to say. And then this is the Japan's energy security and consequence. I think that you might understand that the 90% of Japan's energy is coming from fossil fuel. In terms of electricity, more than 73% is coming from fossil fuel. The inside of the portion is like 30% is coming from coal, and 36% is coming from gas, and then 5% is still coming from oil. That's a kind of electricity mix. And then as a whole, like a 20% of renewables and 5% of nuclear. That's a kind of 100 accumulated into 100. So Japan is really relying on the imported fossil fuel. You to see this, that we are importing the fossil fuel rather less than 2011, like kind of 12 years ago. But the price is really soaring because the fossil fuel prices itself is soaring, and then yen becoming very big. So for example, past 2 years, like in 4 trillion Japanese yen increased in 2 years. So we are paying around 30 trillion yen. It's a kind of annual cost that we are importing fossil fuel from other countries. And also, that this is the Japan's emission reduction trend. Government saying like Japan's emission reduction is really on track, but it's a kind of not so much if you can see that in detail. So it's a very busy slide, and then I hope that you will read that later because it's not the kind of a main agenda of this. But it's a kind of a calculation method, special calculation method is applied to this thing. And especially the baseline year is not the 1990, but we are using the 2013. And the government says it's on track, but still, that even we continue to do this, it's still that we will have about 100 million tons of CO2 remaining by 2050. But of course, Japan pledges that we will reach the net zero by 2050. And another thing is like, so there are 4 types of energy we only have. One is fossil fuel, one is nuclear, one is renewable, one is energy saving efficiency. So if we try to phase out fossil fuel, we have to think about the other energy technology. But and the nuclear is counted as the non-carbon energy, but it takes a lot of time to integrate to the grid. And then it's a really climate change is urgent issue. But if we try to introduce a nuclear power now, it will start the operation after 20 years, and then also that it will maybe operational for 40 to 60 years, and then after that 30, 40 years for decommissioning of the plant, and then we have to have the waste management treatment for 300 years or 20,000 years. So we are talking about like this year, probably 600 gigawatt of solar integrated into the grid globally, but that only 1 gigawatt of reactor of nuclear, we have to think about this one. And then another element is like Japan is saying like, okay, then we can introduce the CCS or ammonia hydrogen to decarbonize thermal power plant. But it's a matter of the cost emerges. This is just a kind of another example that the BMBF calculated. Even with 50% ammonia together with the ordinary coal-fired power plant in Japan, but LCOE exceeds that of even the offshore wind, and then making it an uneconomical emission reduction operation. This is the onshore wind with battery, solar power with battery, but still the ammonia co-incineration is quite high price here. So the non-carbon thermal power plant and the nuclear apparently another option for the decarbonization and climate urgency. And then in Japan, we have already integrated 90 gigawatt of solar PV, but there are many potential to integrate especially the rooftop solars and the new use of solar power, and also especially the offshore wind will have a lot of potentials, like more than 1,000 gigawatt that we have the potential. But for integration of the variable renewables, that we need a transmission system and other integration technology. And then this is our scenario for 2035, that if we try to achieve the net zero on track, then we have to be 80% renewable energy by 2035. And then for the G7 countries, that we already pledged almost the power sector has to be decarbonized by 2035. But still, like Japan is really lagging behind. So we think that 80% is Japan's kind of a real ability. And then maybe we reach the decarbonization of the power sector by 2040. But this is a kind of a potential and an ability that we can explore, that we believe. And then this is the slide by actually the climate group. We can see Japan's kind of a current status is the red side, but we have a huge opportunity for the renewable acceleration here in Japan. And then for that, for especially the offshore wind, the map is not shown well, but I believe that the regional cooperation is quite important. The East Asian region, that including the Pacific, that we need an infrastructure collaboration is quite necessary in this field. Thank you very much.
Next, we are honored to have Sen John, the lead of climate diplomacy and solutions for our climate, focusing on advancing climate action through international cooperation.
Hello, thank you for having me here today. My name is Seiki, and I lead the diplomacy team at Solutions for Climate. We're a non-profit organization based in Seoul, South Korea, and we focus on climate research and advocacy. I want to start by highlighting the recent groundbreaking decision by the South Korean Constitutional Court. Last month, the court declared that parts of the Carbon Neutrality Act of Korea unconstitutional because it fails to set the greenhouse gas emissions beyond target beyond 2030. So this was the first time climate was recognized as the constitutional rights issue in Korea and also across Asia. Also, the court ruled on how the target should be set, that they must be based on scientific facts and international standards, also considering the fair share of burden by the community. So now the parliament needs to come up with, revise the law to include milestone targets up to 2050. And this decision is very timely as we discuss accelerating the energy transition with neighboring Asian countries that face similar challenges of accelerating renewables and transitioning away from fossil fuels. And sends a very powerful message to Asia as countries prepare to submit their national determined contributions for 2035. So to establish a clear science-based pathway to net zero by 2050, some key climate targets and policies in Korea need to be revisited. I want to focus today on the challenges that Korea faces and what needs to be done in terms of accelerating the energy transition. But before I get to that, I'd like to share some key figures and what the current breakdown of energy mix for 2030 looks like for Korea. So Korea is the 13th largest economy and the 10th highest greenhouse gas emitter in the world. We import 95% of our energy. And we have the 5th largest coal power generation, which is slightly smaller than Japan and a little bit bigger than Russia. And our renewables generation, solar and wind alone, is only at 5.4% as of 2022, and is one of the lowest among OECD countries. So if you take a look at the bottom of the chart, it shows the figures disclosed in the 11th Basic Energy Plan, which is the most recent energy plan for Korea. And you can see that LNG portion was increased, and renewables has seen, this is an older old slide, that renewables has seen almost no change from the previous plan. So renewables sharing the 2 consecutive plans of Korea, the 10th and the 11th basic plan, will decrease to 21.6% compared to our 2030 NDC, which says 30.2%. So 2 things here that need to be immediately addressed for an accelerated energy transition in Korea, and one thing is securing a high-level commitment to phase out coal early, and also taking out finance from coal. So, as you know, the International Energy Agency has been very clear that advanced economies need to phase out coal by 2030. And despite Korea being a member of the OECD country, the speed of Korea's coal phase out is not nearly as fast enough. And Korea is the only country in the OECD to have the same coal phase out year as the carbon neutrality target year, which is 2050. So domestically, coal will continue to live on beyond in the mix until 2038 and beyond. And research, suggesting, the slide isn't there, but there are a lot of research by domestic CSOs and think tanks suggesting that all domestic coal power plants can be shut down by 2035 with the right amount of transition finance. So by 2035 with 1.3 billion US dollars and 4.9 billion US dollars to phase out all coal power plants by 2030. And in parallel, finance that's taken out from coal should be directed to renewables, grid technologies, and battery flexible resources like demand response. But the big obstacle that's standing in the way of renewables expansion is the complex bureaucratic permitting and licensing procedures for renewables in Korea. So the map on the left is a region called Hamgyong in Korea. You can see the 8 areas affected by the national regulations, some national regulations, and forestry regulations. And all regulations apply. It leaves the municipality virtually no land to install solar PVs. And this is considering distancing from residential buildings, agricultural lands, and highways. There are studies that 200 gigawatts of additional renewables capacity can be generated with solar alone if the distancing regulation can be alleviated from 300 meters to 100 meters. And wind, so the chart on the right shows the different stages of permitting for offshore wind. How many projects in the pipeline are actually stuck in the beginning stage. And authorities are scattered across 9 different ministries, departments, and 25 different regulations required for offshore wind licensing in Korea, which is severely slowing down offshore wind deployments. Another regulation blocking the deployment, wind deployment in Korea is the high regulation of offshore wind turbines. Currently, the Ministry of National Defense has a regulation to limit wind turbines to 500 feet, which is about 152 meters in height. And this severely hinders the deployment of offshore wind turbines. And this jeopardizes 99.5% of current wind projects in the pipeline as of December 2023. Because in Korea, 5 megawatts of offshore wind turbines are considered small in generation, so are commercially available now to be deployed, but these turbines average 170 meters in height. So this means the smallest generation of 5 megawatts turbines are limited to be installed due to the height regulation, and it limits the Korea's renewable deployment. Given that these smaller wind turbines, as well as larger scale turbines, cannot be deployed off offshore space. Back one slide. So lastly, this is on Korea's public finance being poured into fossil fuels. This has a very big regional implication because Korea is the second largest fossil fuel financier, second only to Canada. However, with Canada signing on to the Energy Transition Partnership and committing to phase out fossil fuel finance, Korea is expected to become the largest fossil fuel financier in the future. And most of our fossil fuel finance is targeted at oil and gas projects. And Korea has so far made no commitments to phase out financing, nor has it signed on to any international agreements such as CTP. So So circling back to the blue case, it would be very important for the government and all the relevant stakeholders that are involved in formulating the implementation of national plan for net zero to hold up this ruling and make an ambitious pledge to phase out coal by 2035. And national government needs to come in because local municipalities cannot handle permitting regulations by itself. So improving permitting procedures led by the government to reduce the mandatory permitting time for Korean renewable projects will be key to achieving energy transition. I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
For showing the situation in South Korea. Okay, finally we have Shin Woo, the Senior Director of Homemakers United Foundation in Taiwan. Shin has been lead voice in community-based environmental advocacy, focusing on sustainable living and local climate action.
Thank you. It's great to meet you here this afternoon. Just briefly introduce about Homemakers United Foundation. Actually, in short, it's one of the oldest environmental protection NGO in Taiwan. And as you can see on the picture, and also a member of the Interior Government. And our approach is more bottom-up, community-based. And we believe if we change the lifestyle of people, we can also combat climate change. And when we talk about the dangers of climate change and war, they are both destructive for energy and food system. So when you talk about how to prepare, we have to enhance energy and food independence. As Arena report shown, renewable energy should take as an adaptation strategy, not just mitigation tools, because renewable energy could supply energy service and also non-energy service. I won't go into detail of this report due to time limit, but we can take a look at this good example. This example is in Japan. As you can see, this is very good constructed agrivoltaic in Chiba. Taiwan and Japan always face typhoon in summer times. In this community, they built the agrivoltaic model by crowd-funded model. We also call it citizen power project model. And during Taiwan season, these solar panels will supply electricity to communities. This is the energy service side for renewable energy. And for non-energy service, solar panel, actually we construct it in a proper way. I have to say it again, in a proper way. It can actually help the agriculture. Like what you see in this picture is the case in Pingdong, the southern part of Taiwan. What you see in the picture is banana trees. If you ever see banana trees on the roadside, it's always broken leaves. Because the leaves are so big, once the wind is too strong, it breaks the banana and also the leaf. But we just experienced a very huge typhoon in this July. And in this agriculture farm, you can see the banana and also the leaf are complete because there are protection from the solar panels. So the farmers could sell the bananas and also the banana leaves to very high-class restaurant at rates. And not just in Taiwan, we just visited some agrivoltaic farmland in Europe. Some of the farmers, they designed a solar panel to protect the raspberries or other berries from frost or snow, or even prevent evaporation from soil. However, in Taiwan, I have to say most of the cases of agrivoltaic are not that positive. That's why we just hold a conference in this July, we invite high-level officers from Energy and Agriculture Department to discuss about how we find out a better solution for unfolding. We have to shift the model from corporate finance-based to community economy-based. And another issue I want to talk about is about the building. For some background information, most emergency shelters in Taiwan are public school. So we can see this picture from our news. After an earthquake or after typhoon, a lot of people from community will gather in the campus. Okay. Another information for you is in Taiwan, most of public schools have to install a solar panel on rooftop. This is mandatory since 2020. However, most of the schools cannot use their own electricity. They have to sell it to the only electricity company in Taiwan, Power Company. So this is a constraint just due to the contract. But there are still some good examples in this July as well. This is a very remote and indigenous village, as you can see in this picture. This Taiwan is very strong, but with the solar panel and storage system, the village get through the typhoon. Sometimes for those remote and indigenous village, they will have huge blackout for over 2 weeks. Okay, then we're back to the project in our big city, Taipei. This is our citizen power project located in Taipei. We've founded, we also call it citizen power project model. I don't go into detail because we have time limit, but if you want to learn more about our project, you can scan this QR code. Due to the constraint I mentioned, because the energy supplied by the solar panels could only connect to the common grid. So if we want to build a resilient campus, we'll do something else. We already did is we already made 2 bike generators in the campus. And we also have small solar PV, and it can connect to the fan. So when the children, they try to grow vegetable and in their campus, they can cooking themselves. And next step, we will buy a PV stove for those children so they can cook for themselves in the campus if there's an emergency. But we want to do further. We want to promote integrated remote with buildings. This is a very good example in Seoul and also in Germany. If there's more building who connect renewable energy just on their rooftop or balcony, this can improve the resilience of the city, also for the buildings. But in Taiwan, this could be seen as illegal construction. And we also need to apply more energy as home appliance. Oh, okay, I'm about to the end. The weather is already a dangerous word. There will be no safe place if the temperature rises above 3 Celsius. Let us put resources in the right place. We talk about military emissions. Global military emissions could reach to 5.5%. It's even higher than international shipping. International shipping only takes 2.9%. Wealthy countries spend 30 times more on military than climate. Let's take a look about this graph. The green line shows the energy price provided by Citizen Power Project. It's a very famous one called EcoPower located in Belgium. You can see it provides very friendly price after Ukraine war. However, the market price shown as red line, it goes very high. So actually, renewable energy to supply a friendly price for a community. And I also found some people fundraising for Ukraine by fundraising solar. But you hardly to see people fundraising for nuclear power plant, right? I think that's the end of my presentation. If you want to know more about our organization, you can see on those video article. Thank you.
Great. Now we will also move into a brief discussion. So I would like to ask the speaker back on stage with me. And here. So I would like to ask our three speakers who each have valuable advocacy experience in their countries to share their thoughts on this question. How can we create effective systems to boost public support and participation in the energy transition and strengthening the community resilience to climate risks? So please take about 3 minutes each to provide your insights. Let's start with Mika, followed by Sandy and Jinping.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's a very broad question because mobilizing the public participation is the fundamental question to the democracy system in the country or the community. But fortunately, the renewable energy has a character of decentralized technology, so it's very close to the community and the local area. So we cannot think of operational big thermal power plant or nuclear power plant by community. But the renewables that you can participate and then you can get into even the facility easily basis. And then it could be, the renewable energy could be very small, like solar cells on your watch or calculator, or maybe it could be big but not big as 1 gigawatt turbine or something like that. It could be maybe 15 megawatt or 20 megawatt, but not the 1 gigawatt turbine or something like that. So it's very close to the people. So already that it was presented, the community scale of renewables could be one option to give the, understanding and the learning of the community towards renewables. And also, that in terms of the security issue, we have to think of resilience of energies. And then the climate security or climate resilience has to be integrated in the urban design, and then the community basis that people can participate in the city design, that thinking about resilience. Because in Japan now the movement is occurring to regulate the housing makers to integrate renewables when they build up the new housing. So it started in Germany actually. So we successfully encouraged the Tokyo Metropolitan Government will start that system program next year. And then we think that each city or kind of local authority has to think to build up renewable energy to protect their citizens' life, from the climate urgency. It is really important because in Japan, for example, like until 2 days ago, it has been 35 degrees in Tokyo every day. It's kind of a fatal hotness for Tokyo citizens. So many people really avoid to get out. And then even inside that we have to have the air conditioning, but at that time that I think in that case that we need to have the very well insulated buildings, and then also if we have the solar panel on the top, then it will be really effectively run. So those kind of things that has to be integrated in the urban design by the local community.
So in the context of Korea, I would think with the very current low renewables penetration, we would need to pivot as new things come up. But I do think we need to be prepared for public pushback to renewables roll out. So we keep to gather public support and social acceptance of renewables. Also, for when coal is phased out of the system, or the the electricity price rises because of the current debt of our national utility, the citizens will point fingers at renewables and find renewables to blame for their inconvenience. And I think for that, the role of civil society organizations would be very critical. And also realizing the role of state actors, especially the subnational governments, who can really drive real change quickly and come up with agile policies to promote the deployment of renewable projects within their jurisdiction. And for that, constantly exposing and also raising awareness to the subnational governments by exposing them to different knowledge sharing exchanges, and also different capacity building programs within East Asia, or among countries that share the same pain would be very
Well, I think people won't participate if they don't feel they have need to participate. So first of all, we have to find out the need of community of people. Take our project as example. Before we invite citizens to become co-owner of this solar power project, we visit the principals and teachers in the school. We asked about their need, and they told us, first of all, they don't want we just pay the rent. Actually, they want us to return the rent, and in another way, they want to develop a new education program focused on energy for those children. And then they also asked us, don't build the solar panel like other school did, just put it on the floor. They asked us to lift it up. We did it. So in these 4 years, we worked with the school happily. They're happy with us, we're happy with them, because we built those solar panels based on their needs. I think that's one important thing. First of all, before we launch the renewable energy project, we have to work and talk with the people. And the second thing I want to share about is education. Right now in Taiwan, a lot of people really have negative feeling about solar panels due to some negative projects on farmland, destructive model. Some people start to believe solar panels are poisons. To make people realize what is true, we ask some company provide some unused solar panel, and we ask people to take hammers from their home and tear down the solar panel to check what's really inside of those solar panels. If you are interested, you can also find out a video on our website. So first of all, I think we have to talk to people, realize what people really want before we actually launch the project. And second, we have to develop what people want, and then develop new education projects to make people really realize what you are going to do.
Thank you so much for your engaging responses. And now let's move on to the Q&A session. So I would like to ask Jiawei, Aaron, and Ray to come back and join us. So we encourage everyone to share their thoughts or ask questions during this time. If your question is directed towards a specific speaker, please feel free to let us know. And before asking your question, we also welcome you to briefly introduce yourself. Just tell us your name and your organization. Okay, so does anyone would like to share or ask a question?
Hi, thank you so much for sharing. My name is Ricky. I am the co-founder of Climate Solutions. We are working with both US policymakers and county policymakers what we can do in terms of a Taiwanese equivalent of the Inflation Reduction Act. My question has to do with the first panel around the intersection between security and climate. Obviously, as many speakers have explained, there's a lot of overlap between these two areas. I myself have been talking to a couple of both Republican and Democratic congressional offices about geothermal. When I talk to Republicans, I talk about security. When I talk to Democrats, I talk about climate. But there are also potential contradictions and conflicts of interest between these topics. For example, Dr. Zhao mentioned that in order for Taiwan to remain secure, we might need to continue our reliance on LNG and choose phase down instead of phase out of fossil fuels. So I'm just wondering, like, how can we resolve this potential tension as we go forward to kind of focus on both of these very, very important areas?
No, thanks for your question. I mean, I guess I would question whether there is a tension there a little bit. I think part of it is the reframing that Ray talked about, and not just assuming that it is for national security we need to continue on the path with some of these transition fuels for longer, and to push back on that. But I think that's then to do that, you have to show why renewables pose security dividends then too. Like, what's the benefit, right? And bring folks along in that case.
Okay. So from that part, I would say, I think the concept I will have is try to highlight the overriding advantage of the renewable energy. We should say, in the meantime, in Taiwan, we talk about those setbacks of the renewable expansion. Because we will only create the renewable energy as a money machine. We can make a lot of profit from the renewable industry, or we will say, oh, it's just a nice thing to have. But if we bring that under the umbrella of national security, it's kind of like a military service obligation for us. It's that every energy transition infrastructure, every renewable energy structure is a way to build out our resilience. It's a part of our CBO events. We should bring this thing together. Maybe that will be a better way that we can try to overcome some barriers we have seen in the past few years in Taiwan.
Any more questions, thoughts you'd like to share? Maybe we can move on to. Okay.
Yeah, let me stand here. My name is Yan Chao. I'm the founder and president of Chinese American Parent Student Council. Thank you. Shall I repeat again? My name is Yan Chao. I'm the founder and the president of Chinese American Parent Student Council. We are the NGO under the United Nations. We have the EXO, the consultant status. And our majors work is with all the women and the youth. So, happy to hear all the panelists, coming from the different regions. And thank you for your time. It's very significant to hear. So, we're talking about energy transition in East Asia. And I know there's a lot of the countries and policy. But here I want to come from the perspective as a public and the private sectors. So my question, is how can the public and the private investment be better mobilized to support all these renewable energies in infrastructure and innovation in East Asia? So I would like to have Aaron to answer the question, and Ray, and maybe Dr. Chow, if you can answer the question.
I'm actually going to turn that over to other folks, I think, for a better position than I am on the private sector piece.
I think that's a
Yeah.
that would be better to ask
Sure.
I think that the public corporations, the partners that invest in renewables have already started. For example, many of the Japanese big companies that invest in the offshore offshore wind project in Taiwan, actually. That is to learn how to manage offshore wind business and operation. And then they got that knowledge because Taiwan is an advanced country in terms of offshore wind than Japan. So they got that kind of knowledge that brought back to Japan and then invest Japan offshore wind energy. Afterwards, they learned those kind of things. And then I showed a kind of a slide of the regional collaboration in terms of especially the bigger scale of investment such as offshore wind that we could get together and then we can learn together from the European advanced example and then that brought that technology to our region as well. So we faster than the public sector, I think the private sector have already started a lot of innovation.
There are some good examples, I would say, in EU. In EU, there are over 8,000, 9,000 citizen power projects, mostly based on collaborative models. And why they could be so, why this kind of model is so popular in Europe? I think first of all, the acceptance of the society. But another important tool is the policy, because in EU they have a high-level policy. It's called Clean Energy for All European Package, and it ensures the involvement of citizens. That's why there's an important organization called RASCO. It even estimates that when it's 2030, will be 45% of renewable energy generated by citizens, just like you and me. And some countries even go more advanced, like Netherlands. It's regulates if there are some contracts avoid citizens' involvement, then the contract could be invalid. So I think the protection from policy is also important. And another issue is the finance system in Europe is also very mature. They have a charity bank that could provide loan for citizen power projects, and those cooperatives could also help each others, no matter on the initiative on policies or on finance support. I think those are very important elements for this private sector involvement.
So I would like to add a layer of these projects around during the past few years around the energy transition in Taiwan. Actually, the corporate have I would say a very significant role in the energy transition. They are dramatic investment in that, whether it's supply side or the demand side. But important thing for that is that when they're doing those energy transition business, they cannot have the mindset as just originally a business consumer or just a client, those kind of relationship. They have to get the awareness that they have to be enabler for the overall policy environment. For example, like we are talking about how to overcome the the barrier for the social acceptance for a lot of the solar development. A lot of the I-100 members company in Taiwan, they don't care about that. They just that's the thing that the government need to solve it. And they leave those kind of hot potato for the old NGO in Taiwan. Like for last May, we are fighting for the rooftop solar mandate. But during that time, we talk about that's the very important way to build out the community resilience for all. But there's a lot of the building company in the real estate. They are quite against this kind of rooftop solar mandate. But those I-100 customers, they cannot show up. And those solar companies, they cannot join this one. They leave the environmental NGO to fight with those kind of real estate. So that will be a kind of like very bad framing if we are just seeing that you are just building a business with the energy transition. You forget that the energy transition is a public good. And nowadays, we have to consider the additional issue in terms of the kind of like the supply chain security, those kind of issue into the consideration. So I would say that's the way we have to reframe or reset the rule when we try to provide the coverage to participate in the energy transition.
Does Ray or Sandy want to add anything? Sorry, one final. Okay.
The second one.
Okay, let's start from this.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I'm Aaron from the Environmental Defense Fund. So I work on energy transition in the oil and gas sector. It sounds like fossil fuels are big in both like Japan, Taiwan, and Korea. And I'm really curious, like for the market that you guys study will focus on, is there any like kind of how do we make like the existing large majority of fossil fuel consumption cleaner? It could be like, I think we push a lot on the methane regulation, methane fee in the US, as well as like methane import law that I think a lot of European Union starting next year. So in your country market, is that like something you also see as a big potential for reduction? Thank you.
Okay, so I think I start first. In Taiwan, I would say the nice thing we have is that actually our oil and gas sector, they are kind of like the majority of that they are state-owned. So we put some policy. They have to consider those kind of situations. They have to do that. But the downside is that related to the uncertainty issue, the government cannot take that into consideration right now. So that's the thing we have said several times. Even you are kind of like a consumer for the LNG, you still have to set out some kind of certification for what kind of the LNG you are importing. You cannot just say that nowadays they import the so-called carbon neutral LNG because they are buying the carbon credit, but they did not consider the potential linkage during the manufacturing process. So that's the thing we are seeing right now. And then in the meantime, I would say for the oil, the gas sector in Taiwan right now, they don't have a clear strategic plan yet. They know they have to be shrunken. But for the gas sector, that will be a troublemaker for the coming decade because all the plans they are seeing that they just want to double the capacity and without any kind of like thinking about the CCS or thinking about the other possibilities for that. So that will, for the oil part, that will be easier to deal with, but for the gas part, that will be pretty challenging for you Taiwan.
How to reduce the possibility strategies? Okay, it's a fundamental question, actually. I just wanted to recall that kind of advanced example, such as Germany and the UK. 2000, German renewable energy power in the power mix was only 6%. And the UK is similar like that. But both countries, more than 50% of renewable in the power mix now, after 20 years. And then in 2000, Japanese renewable energy power mix was 10%. It is mostly coming from big hydro. It's now that 22%. You know, compared to Germany and UK, Japan took more, I think, because it's apparent that Japan has plenty of the renewable energy resource than those countries. But and then that, as I said, that other G7 countries aims the decarbonization of the power sector by 2035, and in the US it's 22% of renewables currently, but the US is aiming for decarbonization of the power sector. So I think that if the appropriate policy framework is launched in the market, then the renewable will expand. And then of course then we have to focusing on transmission systems, storage, and market integration, and information technology or something like that. But those kind of policies has to be integrated to most renewables, and then we can do it that 100% renewable in the future. Soon. Yeah, it's not impossible.
multifaceted. I'm a co-founder of a startup from Germany called Solar, and we're working to make next generation EV, which does not use silicon and could be independent of silicon supply chain. So, and as you might know, up to 99% of the hardware supply chain is just in one country. So I wanted to ask if in your work, if you see this as a big security threat or not, because as slide time commented, it's not a flow-based problem, but a stock-based one. So I'd love to hear more about it.
Maybe Aaron, right?
Sure. No, thank you. I'm excited to hear about your company. I think there is a perception that is a big security threat, and that gives a lot of pause to security actors, and it gives a lot of ammunition to those who are against the energy transition or trying to slow the energy transition, right? And so I think removing that argument from their, from them having the ability to make that argument is a positive thing, and jumping over those supply chain challenges is good. And that's not to say there aren't any security concerns about these supply chains. I think they do exist. I think they are overblown sometimes, given what Ray was talking about. But yeah, I think innovating to get away from those is important.
Yeah, I think basically what Aaron said in terms of I think the current kind of framing and narrative around supply chains is kind of way too much with overrun. And I think if you look historically at kind of similar supply chain issues, I think it's actually quite hard for single countries to kind of dominate, especially these kind of minerals, if they show themselves as bad actors on the international market. There's usually kind of a way to shift that. It takes maybe a little while longer to rebuild those supply chains, but it does happen, and we've seen that before. I think there is a good conversation to be had though about I think there's kind of this low cost, how do we deploy renewables as fast as possible globally, right? But then there's also kind of what are the kind of more value-added benefits that can be distributed around the world. So I think it's every country probably needs to ask themselves, every region needs to ask themselves, what are we good at? What do we have in terms of raw material? What do we have in terms of skills and technology? What do we want to have? What are things that really make sense in terms of our markets? And I think that there's a lot of work to be done there that I think will be really helpful in terms of really defining what's going on in supply chains better, as well as reducing, I think maybe this oversimplified narrative around it that's happening now.
Thank you. Sorry, we cannot really take more questions because of the time. But before we wrap up today's session, I would like to ask our panelists to share their closing remarks on this question. How can we advance stronger regional cooperation in energy transition and climate action? So please take about 2 minutes each to offer your final thoughts on this important topic. So maybe we can start from Eric again.
Yeah, no, thank you, and I apologize. I'm going to have to leave right at 4 to get to another event. So I think advancing stronger regional cooperation is, I actually think the security perspective is a way to do that, because I think bringing security actors together allows for a different kind of conversation. And I think, as many of the panelists have pointed out, there are shared interests in the region on the transition, on the avoidance of fossil fuels, and so there's a reason to collaborate and share best practices, share innovations, because the time that we have is so little to move these things quickly. So partnering is absolutely critical. Thank you so much for the whole event and organizing.
Okay, so let me start. Yeah. So I think that for the regional cooperation, I would say in the meantime, we are see a lot of work fight against the energy transition. They will use the Japan and Korea, as the say, oh, they are still highly rely on the fossil fuel and the nuclear issue, we should not go further. So we need to kind of come back with those kind of force argument and force solution together. Like in Taiwan, nowadays we are trying to bring our state-owned power company. They will just spend a lot of money based on the CCS and the co-firing with the ammonia. But we are bringing those kind of research focus on those issues. For the SFOC and for the IEI, talk about higher share of the renewable is possible, and those kind of co-firing actually are the forced solution. So I think we have those will be a good thing that we can bring together, because we know those kind of arguments that will be always used by the different government who try to slow down the pace of the energy transition. So if next time we can have a kind of like three countries who have a joint report or joint open data talking about those issues, like the REI have some joint data before the G7, but because Taiwan is not part of the G7, so we have to find out another chance that we can have those kind of collaborative efforts to push forward for this issue under a big picture in terms of the geopolitical thinking and also the regional security issue.
Yeah, I think there's kind of three things. I think first of all, just looking at the details that are, places that we've kind of gone through here, they have really similar issues, right? So I think it's kind of the amount of, fossil fuels that's still in the energy mix, the amount that's imported. I think they're all kind of very much in the same stage in terms of deployment of renewable energy. So even just I think there's kind of cultural and economic connections between all of them that I think definitely make a good case for continued cooperation and conversation. So I'm just glad to bring all of them together and to kind of put all these things on the table to pick up. I think the second thing is maybe kind of more looking at I think kind of the broader, East Asia. I think especially looking at kind of the finance and supply chains with Southeast Asia, and especially I think kind of like fossil fuel development and things like that going on. Again, they all kind of are doing it for similar reasons, and so I think just kind of teaming up and I think beginning to exchange around that makes a lot of sense. And then I think more broadly, I think obviously there's kind of this. A lot of more turmoil, I'd say geopolitically, right, in East Asia, and so I think that this can maybe create more places for conversation and dialogue in the region. I also think that there's a huge role that groups in the United States can play, as well as the U.S. government can play, in terms of trying to figure out these problems as well, because there are a lot of kind of oil and gas exports to these places at the moment. And so I think that's something that transnationally you can deal with as well.
I also want to echo what Wei said earlier. I think as a region, we need to challenge the narrative that equates fossil fuel with national security, and shifting that narrative in Korea, but also in East Asia, the misconception about what real energy security is, that promote renewables as the real solution. But to do that, I think we can work together to come up with evidence-based research on projects, on financial and environmental risks associated with oil and gas fossil fuel projects. Because oftentimes we have a lot of data on fossil fuel, but we don't have an alternative solution suggesting specific numbers in renewables investment and whatnot. So that's something that we are trying to do from Korea, focusing on the numbers on clean and how that can be a solution to phase out of fossil fuels.
I think East Asian countries are facing similar challenges, but also we share with them some common on our culture and society. So it will be good that if we can exchange exchange our experience, even share the barriers we are facing periodically, not just on Climate Week in New York. I think that would be very helpful to let us have a thought about how to develop our cities in a more resilient ways. How can we invite more citizens to become the center of energy transition policies?
I think that the collaboration has to be done because Japan is, sometimes the side of perpetuator to other Asian nations. And then in terms of climate, the security issue, that Japan is now promoting the fossil use in Asian region as a kind of a next market besides Japan. So so if we see those kind of situations, that we need the collaboration. I don't say it's a grassroots collaboration, but for example, think tank collaboration. It's apparent that renewable energy, that we have a lot of resources in Asian region. It's totally viable. So the think tanks that in those areas that go together, and then that show the potential of renewables that go together, that could be one of the collaboration to tackle with the fossil fuel reliant future, and then also like kind of like already shown like early solar. That was the first example was born in Japan, and then the Japanese early solar groups that developed it in Korea and in Taiwan. So community-based solar and wind power that they try to deliver in Korea and Taiwan. Those kind of collaboration could be done, or could be done. I mean that it's already started for years and years. And then it's quite important that we should continue to that exercise.
Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing such inspiring insights. This discussion are incredibly valuable as we work together to tackle the challenges of energy transition and climate action. And I hope we can continue these conversations and deepen our collaboration moving forward. Finally, I'd like to take a moment to let you know that TCAN will be hosting another panel event this Friday titled Decarbonizing the Chips, Challenges to Ensure the Semiconductor Industry Move Towards Net Zero. So you can join in person or watch the live stream online. We hope to see you there. And thank you so much to our panelists today and everyone for your presence today. Thank you so much.
Yes.
气候